In the near term, looking to use an existing grant program to fund that pilot program. And in the longer term, just to mention that the Federal Transit Administration typically, provides contributions in the range of 60 to 80% of programs. So that's a substantial contribution. And also looking at future partnerships with university, businesses, in the city. So it could be a mix of funds. We posted the draft report mid-July on the project website. We plan to post the final after tonight. And we received a variety of comments, folks really supportive of the innovative transit solutions, folks really interested about the costs and the trade-offs. And just to say, we had a lot of conversation and support for microtransit, and particularly with more senior folks. I think some of our questions in the public meeting was about, hey, do you think this is going to be a challenge? And across the board, we heard, no, we really welcome it because it's going to go where we need to go. Yeah. And with that, we'll close for any questions. And Larry, if you have any.
I think administration and council know near and dear public transit is to me and to our community. Having with a new leaf, with our senior citizens center, with our senior services, how important it is for us to be able to provide those services, but also from a public servant standpoint to do those efficiently. As you saw, we're currently spending $34 per rider to move people around our city, which is an exorbitant amount of money that we're currently spending. Trying to ensure that we bring those costs down by also increasing ridership is also exceptionally important. Jill and her team have done an exceptional job. I could not have done this without them. Honestly, they saw insight and provide insight through all of their contacts, communications with Embark, with CityLink, with VIA down in Arlington, that really opened our eyes and educated us as we move forward through this process. Having seen and heard from our citizens and their desires and understandings for ensuring that we have great community access to public transit, it's important for Broken Arrow not only just to take the step moving forward, but also to be the leader within the region on ensuring that we have proper transit as we move forward as a city. So Jill and I are here to answer any questions that you may have, and happy to go from there.
A couple of things, Mayor. Yeah. Just a little background here. We got a lot of citizens in the audience tonight, and we have a lot of folks online. I just wanted to mention that I'm so proud of this effort because when the administration came to you last year and talked about the two initiatives that we felt were going to be important that were not the traditional concrete and asphalt, two of those, actually three of those, was the Gateways project, which we have movement on. Then it was the program to provide a ridership for those that captured audience within our community, and we're working on the implementation plan. And then you have tonight's presentation. And so I think the council's option is, if you're ready, you could accept the program, but that's just the beginning. As it was mentioned, there still is a lot of work to do with respect to the actual implementation plan, to where we would begin the program. Or you could actually take it under advisement, and then we could advertise that it's ready for review, and then you could adopt it at the next meeting. It's now at your level, just if you're ready to go. But I just want to tell you, I fully support this. I've met with Larry. I've talked to Kenny Schwab about it. And I feel like this is the direction we need to go to help those that are underserved, as it's been mentioned, have the access to get to those vital services that they need. So that's my thoughts for the council.
I would thank Lisa for serving on this. This is a topic that's near and dear to me, both from the transportation side and the years of service on the senior board, and watching many of those folks in that particular need range either not being able to drive because they of their physical impairments, or just not having the financial wherewithal to do that, needing to get to doctor's visits and things like that. And developing a bus program that worked kind of in the 80s and 90s, but now with the development of microtransit, that's really the future we're headed to. And so this report, I support that, having a bus line to get us to and from Tulsa, that's important. But I'm even more focused on how we get the people who need it from the door of their home to the grocery store, to the doctor's office, to the post office, whatever they need to do business in. And that's where the microtransit, and that is the future. I think what this tells me is what we've already, and you're seeing nationwide. Arlington was one of the earliest to adopt it, but you're seeing nationwide that this is where it's heading. And I think we need to be in front of that trend, not behind the trend. So, I mean, I support this very much. I mean, I would be okay with and would make a motion accordingly of adopting this final report so it can be submitted for finality and publication.
Yeah, and like, so we can get started on it. We don't need to wait. I'm for that. Yes.
Would you like
I'm
to
excited.
second his motion?
Oh, I will second his motion.
All right. We have a motion, and a second. Roll call.
Just one more question, Mayor, when you're ready. So the implementation, Larry, I mean, estimated time, because I know a lot of people are interested in this. When do you think you'll be ready for, present it to me, and then we can get it to the governing body, then we're ready to roll, literally?
So staff will be working internally to move forward with the next steps with funding that we currently have available in this fiscal year budget, working with our partners that we currently have in place, but also potentially working with new partners. We hope to have a proposal at the beginning of the year for us to be able to move forward with the pilot program, and then also to have a plan in place as we move forward with the entire project.
And you're right, there are federal funds available and grants available right now, but I think there's some short time frames for getting those things in. So we want to be mindful of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Passes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
you.
Your turn. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8, citizens' opportunity to address the council. We have one person signed up for speak in favor of our Battle Creek Golf Course trees, it seems. Brad Young.
Good evening. I'm Brad Young. I live at 1505 West Ulysses Street, Broken Arrow, which is Beltrace 2, and Battle Creek, north of 51st and east of Aspen. I live on the fifth hole tee box of Battle Creek. And imagine purchasing your home on the golf course in part for the incredible view that affords right there, where you can see at times all the way to 81st and Lewis and see Cityplex. And then some years later, watching the city plant 10 evergreens and 8 cypress trees on the tee boxes there that will eventually block a significant portion of the view from our home and other homes adjacent to ours. From what I understand, this was done in response to repeated complaints from a fellow homeowner about 8 to 10 houses west of our home, because the fifth hole is a dogleg right, and golfers tend to fade that way. And so there were repeated complaints about golf balls landing in their yard and hitting their home, which I am in sympathy with. While I'm sympathetic for their situation, I don't think the situation was handled properly, as we other homeowners never received any notice of this planned work being done, and therefore we were not afforded the opportunity to provide our input to this council, which this council always has seemed to seek citizen input. And in this case, I think you fell down on your job. The first time that I became aware of this plan was the morning when city workers started hauling trees up and digging holes and planting trees. Multiple homeowners are having their property views impeded for the sake of other homeowners' protection of their property. To add insult to injury, the trees, in my opinion, will not help protect the properties in question, because I golf there. They aren't going to help what you're trying to solve. They've been completely neglected since they were planted in last spring, so about 15 to 16 months. They have not been watered except what water happens to hit them when the golf course tee boxes are watered, which is not sufficient for new trees. In addition, the trees have been heavily infested with bagworms, which has completely denuded some of the trees and partially stripped others. And I have pictures that I provided to the IT department that you can bring up, and you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. I estimate that about a third of the trees are dead, dying, or heavily damaged. I have provided pictures of the trees to the city clerk's office to confirm what I'm telling you. Coincidentally, city workers, which I believe were Parks Department employees, came out the day after I spoke to the Parks Department, August 10th, and pulled off as many bagworms as they could find. I've spoken to the director of the Battle Creek Golf Course Maintenance and the Broken Arrow Parks Director, and heard the following. Even though the trees are on the golf course, the trees are the responsibility of the City Parks Department and are therefore out of sight and out of mind. I do not fault the golf course management. It's my opinion. They have all they can handle maintaining the golf course and are typically out there at 5 a.m. before it's light. And with the weather conditions we've experienced this summer, the Parks Department, I suspect, has similar challenges. I have no illusions this council will remove the trees based solely on my comments, but I do recommend any decision made regarding this matter be made with more input from all parties. A small piece of information is that there's approximately 500 homes just bordering the golf course holes, and an average value of $350,000. That's a property value of $175 million, and an approximate property tax annually of $3,500 a year is almost $2 million in property taxes that generates. And if you want to see what happens when a golf course with homes on it is neglected, go out to Page Belcher and drive around a golf course where you see derelict homes because they're falling apart. And that is not what any of us want, because Battle Creek I consider is a gem of a project.
I agree.
Thank you. And I have my contact information with the clerk if any of you care to see it further or have any questions.
Thank you. I do know that this, I know we don't address things, but I do know there was a lot of complaints about, and it's those homes. So, but thank you for coming to us and,
We can't take action.
I know that.
but now
I'm
we
aware
know,
of that.
we're aware of your,
Because what I found, it's setting things up for failure because the Parks Department's responsible for it. But where it's positioned, the city workers literally have to walk from the bottom of the fifth hole or from the top of the fourth hole with a bucket in hand down there to do anything with them. And, it sets both of those departments up for failure.
thank you, sir.
Thank you.
On that note, can someone, can Kenny get with him?
Well, I just want to be clear that the council wasn't derelict in any of their duties. I'm the one that made the decision to put the trees in as a result of the recommendation from the golf course management and parks. And if there's an issue with maintenance, then I will address that. But I believe the trees need to stay based on everything that took place in order to address this situation. So I'll be glad to meet with the homeowner and talk to him about it. But this is 18 months of discussion to try to address an issue which I think we had resolved. That's maintenance is a concern to me. If we put something in, we should
Yeah,
maintain
we
it.
should maintain it. Okay. All right.
So you're going to follow up on it?
Be glad to. Kenny and I will.
Item 9 is general council business. 9A is consideration, discussion, and possible action regarding PUD 94AA, East Battle Creek, 23 acres. Larry Curtis.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, BAZ 2114 is an application to rezone 13.8 acres from CG, Commercial General, to RN, Residential Multifamily, and PUD 94AA. It's a request for a major amendment to PUD 94 for a proposed 23-acre commercial and multifamily development. This item was continued from the City Council meeting on July 19, 2022. The City Council continued this item to today's meeting. Since that time, the design statement has been updated to address some concerns voiced with the council at the council meeting. Those changes include requiring gated access points to multifamily portion of the development and requiring that the site plan be approved by both Planning Commission and City Council. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and I know the applicant's representative is here to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. Do you guys have any questions for the applicant? We've got a lot of speakers.
I would just, if the applicant has something to add prior to
Yeah.
speaking, our normal process is to give them the opportunity to do so.
Certainly, councilors. Nathan Cross, 2 West 2nd Street, Suite 700, Tulsa. I think we've seen this project. This is maybe the third time we've talked about it. So everyone is aware of the general concept. We, as a bit of a restatement of what we've already talked about, this went, as we know, through a comp plan amendment that created a scenario west side and the resident to the east. As part of that, we submitted a plan initially to that was different than the one that you're seeing today. We sat down with staff, and staff indicated that they thought that it was more appropriate to maintain a buffer of commercial around the hard corner and up Aspen and along Omaha, which pushed the multifamily portion of the project farther back a little bit. We understood that and understood the reasoning behind that, because those are valuable commercial spaces for the city of Broken Arrow, and we made changes accordingly. We're here today to talk about use of the property. I understand that the traffic is a concern. It is something that we've attempted to address with a change to our submission. But I want to, and again, I will be as brief as I can, maybe for the room a little bit, as I understand it at least, and staff can keep me honest. When you go through a rezoning of a property or development of a property, sometimes the first step is the comp plan amendment, which we went through. But the next step would be rezoning, which relates to the use of the property. The third part of that, should you get through the first two hurdles, is the platting process, which is when engineering and traffic get involved. You talk about infrastructure, you talk about ingress and egress, you talk about traffic. You'll note in your staff report, there's a recommendation of approval with a traffic study and with engineering review of that traffic study. That is a requirement that the applicant obviously would abide by, but that's part of the platting process. The plat is reviewed. The plan that you see before you is a conceptual site plan. That is our best guess at what we think it would look like, but we haven't engineered the site yet. As such, we can't tell you definitely where everything's going to go. We have a pretty good idea. Traffic studies are based on when we get an actual plan in place that we're married to. It provides quantifiable information that the council can rely on to analyze the traffic at this location. Should we get past this, we would get to that point. I think there's probably, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, I could see where there would be some concern about approving a plan and then not knowing what the site plan looks like when it comes back through, because you guys don't see it. It goes to the planning commission, but it doesn't come here. To try and address that concern, we've added to our request that our site plan would come back to you all for approval to ensure, with the information of the traffic study in hand, that this project still makes sense. With that being said, I'd like to, if you could, this is all revised. It's right here, I think. No, that's comp plan. Here it is, right here, I'm sorry. Yeah, if you go all the way down. So as part of what I'm talking about, based on the comments we heard at the last meeting, we've attempted to try and address this issue in a fashion. And that fashion is that we're creating a access point here. This would be restricted access. I guess it could theoretically be exit only. in addition to the restricted access on the west, or on the, I guess that's the north side. The main access point would obviously be down off of Aspen, where you see the concept and the two gates. The goal of this change would be to drive more ingress and egress. Again, this is something that would be looked at and studied at the plating phase. Would include a traffic study that would demonstrate the traffic impact at the location, and would include, as we talked about briefly in previous meetings, a dedication of additional right-of-way along Aspen and Omaha, I think, including deceleration lanes if necessary, which I think we assume they're going to be necessary to allow easier ingress and egress. Again, this is a use comment. That's what the comments were at the last meeting. And so I wanted to point out that we made that change, and that we had provided, being sensitive to the idea that a site plan doesn't come back before you all with the traffic study information in hand and an ability to review and comment and approve or disapprove that site plan prior to plating. We added that requirement to our request. And I'll take any questions you might have.
So with this drawing here, the road going to the north, which is going to be on Omaha, is that a gated area right there? Or is
Here.
that street open?
You're talking about
What would be your
Here?
entrance?
Yes.
here,
No, to the
off
north.
Omaha.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a gate back here. This is commercial.
right.
So that's not gated. That's a commercial access, but for the residential, it's gated.
That was my question. For that residential getting out, that is gated.
That is gated.
And that is one of the things we talked about last time.
And that, to be honest, that was on our plan before, but what we're going to present is a conceptual plan. I mean, we have not engineered the site. We work with an engineer has done a lot of work in Battle Creek and one of the planners did the original Battle Creek plan. And so they got a pretty good idea of what they're doing, but this is all dependent on engineering. And in this case, our engineering and approval of a site plan and a plat that would be built off that site plan would all be driven by another round of public hearing and comment with traffic study information available.
Well, I think one of the biggest concerns is the fact that West Omaha Street is not slated for widening anytime soon. It would have to be put on the next bond, I would say. And I don't even know that we've considered that. It's a major hill, so it's going to be very pricey. And we don't even get a bond to 2027. So, and that's where I think a lot of the congestion is. North Aspen is a 5-lane road and it's backed up. I mean, they're all backed up there. So while the use could be multifamily, obviously, the timing, the infrastructure, I just don't see how you get there.
Well, and as I said, we are open to making the gate on that end of secondary access gate exit only. The reason it's there is because we believe the fire department will require it.
Oh, sure.
It's not because we want it.
Yeah.
Would it be required if you have the two other?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
I do have a concern. I mean, if there's invariably or inevitably going to be people trying to make left turns off of North Aspen or onto North Aspen going back to the south out of, if those are your primary entrances.
Mhm.
And there's no lights there. So I think you're still going to have a traffic kerfluffle because you're going to have traffic backed up or you're run the risk of increased accidents of people who insist on making left turns on unprotected.
Well, and I
And
feel
I mean,
like,
that concerns me. No, that concerns
I feel like if I were living there, I would come out and turn right onto Aspen, so I didn't have to turn left. Because the highway isn't that far away. I mean, because the highway, it might seem closer, but really, if you turn right on Aspen and left on Omaha, the highway is just right there.
I agree with you completely. I just know people.
Yeah.
They're going to want to make a left turn out of here.
And I would say to that, just for my 2 cents, that's a 5-lane road right there with the center turn lane. I'm not sure how many other developments are on roads like that in Broken Arrow, but I'm not sure that you could ask for a better scenario for some sort of development. We can't necessarily we can't put stoplights at every commercial development or multifamily
That's a lot
development.
of people suddenly trying to make left turns.
Well, and I'm
onto
just still
Aspen.
concerned about Omaha, no matter where the entrance and exits are, people are still gonna go to Omaha. I mean, you're gonna be getting off the highway and coming down Omaha and then turning right, turning south onto Aspen. And that's a big, huge mess right now, much less, and there's already another apartment complex going in on the northwest corner.
That's a Tulsa project.
Yes, I know.
No,
But it's
I'm-
still
no, I was
there.
asking,
is it a
traffic.
People
traffic?
still
No, I
live
agree.
in Tulsa.
I know, no, I was
It's
saying.
still-
I
Yeah,
couldn't
it
remember.
is.
That's not what
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I was
It still
asking.
adds
Yes,
to the
it's a Tulsa
traffic.
project. Yeah, yeah, sorry. But there's still a lot of people. I mean, right now, I mean, I said at the last meeting, I've gone and driven it and it wasn't even rush hour and I sat through 4 stoplights. And that's frustrating. And so those people right now could go and come down Aspen, but they're not doing that. So those people that are already doing that aren't going to change their traffic patterns. That's what they do right now. So we're just adding more people to it. So I mean, I voted for the comp plan change. I was one that did vote for it because I actually like the idea and the thought of it. But just the infrastructure right now, I mean, and once I went and drove it, I'm like, this is crazy.
Mayor, members of council, I rarely make comments when it comes to projects because I'm a strong believer in economic development, try to grow your community. But in this case, the infrastructure really concerns me. And so I have a question for Larry and Trevor. The developer may not want to hear this, but is there any way to condition the PUD on waiting until that road has been widened to where we can address the intersection and we can work with
Subject to,
Tulsa,
yeah.
subject to? I mean, I'm trying to look at this because I do see the development has the potential for a project, but our infrastructure in this case, this will be one of the first roads that I'm going to have to recommend to council that we widen because of the amount of traffic that is there and the fact that Tulsa County is going to be widening a couple of miles to the east. So we need to tie that in together. So I want to throw that out for discussion because I rarely comment when it comes to projects, but this is something I think we need to discuss further. So is that possible?
So the short answer to your question is yes, it's a zoning decision. It's a public health, safety, welfare issue of traffic. Courts look at it as long as the issue is fairly debatable, they'll give deference to the legislative body. And so the short answer to your question is yes.
All right. Do you guys have any other further questions for Nathan? We can hear from.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we've got, so we have 153 that do not wish to speak, that are in opposition. And then we have 13 that, a couple of people marked that they did want to speak and that they didn't want to speak, but they are in opposition. So when I call your name, just let me know if you're going to come up and speak or not. Robert Fox. And if you'll state your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
I'm Robert Fox. I live at 1804 West Lincoln Street. So to start it off with, yes, the traffic is horrible on 51st Street. I will note that it's about a mile away. It's not like just turn the corner and jumping on the highway like that. Second of all is I live in Shiloh, and traffic already cuts through our neighborhood a lot to bypass the traffic. So we're not a gated area. So all we get is traffic going in and out of that area, not part of our housing addition because of the backup. Okay. So, and rightfully so, might be 8 years or better for maybe, and we put a maybe on there if we get, if the voters pass it. So, I'm gonna go through real quick. So, I'm gonna ask you, council members, did you walk our area and talk to the people? You don't have to answer, because I did. I walked every house in my neighborhood, and all of them opposed it. No questions. So the representatives that are representing us for Broken Arrow, I don't understand why that the Battle Creek area is all opposing it, and we're getting negative feedback on that. So how many apartments that are in our area that are next to the golf course? There are 2 right now. This would be probably the 3rd one, but I'm only counting the ones that are really on the golf course themselves. And that's over probably about 500 units or better, which is ridiculous itself. I want to know, since that you read off the ones that are opposing it, is there anybody in favor of it?
Not in the staff.
Yeah, let the record show no one. So
The developer is, the developer process.
One member. And by the way, that member doesn't live in Broken Arrow, nor does he go to school in Broken
Okay,
Arrow,
okay.
nor does his
Thank you.
wife live here. I understand that.
Address that.
I'm addressing in the sense of he doesn't have a game in this fight. Okay. So we have one member then that is for it. Everybody's opposing it. All right. So let's let the record show that, because we're not reflecting that at all. And how many members of you got emails reflecting negative on this?
Oh, yeah.
Did you get any that wanted it?
I didn't.
Let the record reflect that too. Because you're not saying it, so they're not writing it. All right? So no one's in favor of this. And why we're getting yes votes, I have no idea. I really don't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Just for the record, I did check to see what our apartment occupancy rate is right now, and it's a little over 96% occupied, which kind of blows my mind, actually. But we do still have other apartment complexes that are going up right now. That doesn't factor into that. So, okay. So Scott Grimm, I've got you marked as wishing to speak and not wishing to speak. Scott Grimm? He's in opposition. Scott Hibbets. You're not Ashley Hibbets. You're Scott Hibbets. You have 3 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm Scott Hibbets. I live at 1705 West Montpelier in part of Shiloh. I think most of what I was planning on saying has kind of at least been addressed. And first off, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Whippy. Thank you, City Manager Spurgeon, for at least considering putting this on hold until the correct infrastructure is in place. My biggest concern, where I live is the furthest road on the north side of our neighborhood. And especially in the mornings, I think, Vice Mayor, I think you drove it in the afternoon, but in the morning, Omaha will back up anywhere from a quarter of a mile to a half mile. So people turn south down Oak to come through our neighborhood. And so at least twice a month, I'm turning right off my street, and I literally, sometimes I will say a prayer that I hope that nobody is pulling down south down Oak and hitting their gas pedal, because everybody's in a hurry. So if they're rerouting through our neighborhood, they're not driving slow. I've literally been passed on Oak in our neighborhood by someone in a hurry.
Thanks.
And my other concern with that is literally, it's not even 100 yards, I don't believe, from the entrance right there. There's a bus stop right there. And I worry about kids. I worry about people turning south down there to cut through our neighborhood and a kid being in the way, and that's it. So if the correct infrastructure is in place, I think, that could potentially change the way many people feel about this. But if we're 6, 7, 8 years away from having that in place, I think we should maybe at least considering putting it on hold. So, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Joe Pester. Joe Pester, I've got you as in opposition, to speak and to not speak, but in opposition. So noted. Gail Morris. Okay. Mike Hinson. No. Greg Strange. Okay. Trina Pester? No. Bill Turner? All right.
Winner.
Evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and
Evening.
Mr. Councilors. And I'm here to, I was kind of glad that the people before me talked about traffic a little bit. But I didn't plan to talk about traffic. I'm planning to talk about density.
Okay.
And I need my drawing up there. I started with this drawing to come up with my crude drawing. At least it will work. So essentially, you see the same thing from the 2/3 from the left. And what I wanted to point out was up in the upper right-hand corner, there's an apartment complex now called the Greens at Aspen. And it's right near the Broken Arrow Expressway. It has 378 units in it. And then coming on down sort of northwest, southeast, and northwest, you run into the Heights at Battle Creek apartment complex, and it has 276 units. And when you really measured off, which I did, I went out and drove the course. It's 370 yards between those two apartment complexes. Then you see where the Heights at Battle Creek butts up against the corner of the new proposal. And that's roughly, again, I know this is conceptual, but the actual yardage, I wouldn't know, but I would guess somewhere close to less than 100 yards. So you have an apartment complex almost against another apartment complex. And their proposal is to add 328 apartments. And so when you add all that up together, you come up with 982 units in just that spans. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
And I went a little further and just looking just for information. On the other side of Omaha, there's two apartment complexes within 0.2 of a mile of the intersection. They have 604 units between those two. And so when you add those to the ones we have on this side, there's 1,140 apartments for density. And that we know about the widening. I think I'm not going to talk about that too much because I think you guys have addressed it already. But I was looking at when the original PUD plan was discussed and approved about 30 years ago, it included single-family dwellings. The acceptance of this plan helped Shiloh at Battle Creek grow because home seekers liked the plan and wanted to move here. Since that time, the city of Broken Arrow has amended this PUD several times, seemingly to abandoning the original proposal and concept, which was popular. If the latest proposal is accepted and approved by the city, the impact of Shiloh will result in devalued properties and could lead to many residents wanting to leave rather than moving in. And another thing I kind of found interesting was, my last sentence. No other golf course in Broken Arrow has more than one apartment complex adjacent to its property. This right here, if it got approved, there would be 3. If Broken Arrow is looking for, I want to be number 1 for having 3, okay, but,
Indian
I don't
Springs
see
does
that.
have 2 apartment complexes, but
okay, thank you very much.
thank you, sir. Manette Winnington?
I have some more handouts. Can I give them to you?
Sure.
Okay. I got accused of being a teacher last
Uh,
month. I wasn't, I was a business person.
But
so-
you had great information that you handed to us last time, for sure. Thank you.
And I apologize. I ran out of ink. So these may not look really very nice, but what I'm giving you, I will reflect on this. Okay?
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Wimpy and council members. My name is Minette Whittington. I live at 1605 West Plymouth Street in Magnolia Gardens at Battle Creek. I'm here again in opposition to the rezoning at 51st and Aspen area. For the past few weeks, I've been thinking about what else I can add to the information I presented to you at the last council meeting. And you weren't here, Mayor Wimpy, okay, at the last council meeting, and I really can't add any more factual information. I think this time I would like to plant a seed in your minds of what would be more beneficial to our area and our city rather than another apartment complex building that will add to the traffic congestion at 51st and Aspen. Since that parcel of land is already zoned commercial, I would rather see a planned development such as office buildings with local retail businesses and small restaurants. Now, this is where what I gave you comes into play, okay? In Lafayette, Louisiana, they have developed a beautiful community called River Ranch where people live, work, play, shop, and dine, all within walking distance. To develop our Battle Creek area into a more of a planned community would increase revenue to the city through sales tax, restaurant and liquor tax, property tax, and whatever else taxes you can think of. I ran out of ideas. Battle Creek is a beautiful development with a golf course winding through it. It has the potential to become unique, and with the right kind of development around it, and even enhancing our city of Broken Arrow. When the streets are widened, my vision for Battle Creek goes beyond more apartments and dealerships. What I've talked about will take a different kind of a developer, but I do think it is something to think about. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. My whole family's about 45 minutes from Lafayette, so
Oh, is that
I was
right?
like, oh,
Yeah, well, then they would know about River Ranch. So, do you have any questions?
no, thank you.
Okay.
All right. Ron Graddock? Graddock? Grattop?
Craddock.
Graddock. Okay.
Hello, everyone, Mayor, Council. I'm Ron Greta. I'm the current president of Shiloh HOA, Shiloh Battle Creek HOA. That's a neighborhood that you've seen is directly east of this planned development, 106 homes. I'm also the leader of the Battle Creek HOA Presidents Group. So I regularly meet and communicate with the other Battle Creek neighborhood presidents, including Shenandoah, Magnolia Gardens, Wakefield Heights, Gettysburg, the Reserve, and altogether these neighborhoods represent a pretty significant block of ward Ward 1, and we're pretty unanimous against this issue. Here's why we're against it. I'm going to skip the part where we've already talked about the traffic. We all know that the traffic is bad. And then we've just heard there's already 3 major apartment complexes on Omaha within a half mile west of Aspen, and a 4th is currently under construction. All have entrance and exits onto Omaha. We believe that adding 350 plus more apartments literally around that intersection would exacerbate an already bad traffic situation. All of the Battle Creek neighborhoods have their main entrances and exits either on Omaha or on Aspen, just north of Omaha. So traffic situation on Omaha is a critical concern to us, and hence our opposition to this. I would like to point out, or we would like to point out, that we are not opposed to some development of BACP 180 area. Again, perhaps offices that was mentioned before, light commercial, like the area just south of BAE on Aspen around that McDonald's. But we are strongly opposed to high density development in this area until there is a plan and schedule for improving Omaha to meet the higher traffic demands that are already there. We also would respectfully submit that the area south of Albany across from the hospital, or the area southwest of Lynn Lane and Omaha, where the old Comet used to be, would be much better areas for high density development at this time. Albany already has 4 lanes, typically not crowded in that stretch, has very easy access to the BAE, not to mention all the new commercial development around Stony Creek and Hillside that would be super convenient for people in that, for residents there. Likewise, Lynn Lane is now 4-lane to and from the BAE all the way to Omaha. And as a result, new development there should only generate minimal new traffic through Aspen and Omaha intersection. Plus, there's a major public park there, as well as easier access to the major commercial area along Hillside for new residents there, as opposed to new residents on Aspen and Omaha. So again, we would request that these areas be looked at for development before we put in new high density development around the area of Omaha and Aspen.
You did a good job. You thought you'd go over by a minute.
I was able to skip some things because some other people had already mentioned.
Thank you, sir. Larry Stout.
My name is Larry Stout. I live directly across the golf course fairway from the Height Apartments. There are a lot of things that have already been said that I was thinking about, but I'm going to save the time for other people and share that. Mayor, I know that you used to live in our area. I was told that you lived in our area. I don't know where the rest of you live, but there's only 2 comments that I would like to make. They're of course personal, and I'm sure the other people, everyone's talking about the traffic, and there's one fellow talking about the trees as far as livability of being on the golf course. I searched before we bought our house. I've been there 4 years. I searched the whole area to see what it was. The commercial is fine. I've got some of my own ideas. I was an architect for 34 years. I'm retired now. I've got some of my own ideas that might work with that, but of course that's not my job. But there are 2 items that I would just like to share with you guys. I just want to say this, that like I said, I don't know where all of y'all live, but for us that live there in Shiloh and the other HOAs, I would like for you to just think about personally and collectively, how would you benefit if you were there? How would you benefit, or even with the city, how would you benefit from this rezoning? And number 2 is how are you affected personally by this rezoning? And those are the only things that I can say right now. And I want to thank each one of you for, this is the first time I've seen this committee. I've been here to all the rest of them. And I want to thank you guys for your consideration and your open-mindedness to the people that live there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Okay, that is all the ones that signed up to speak. These are ones that did want to speak. There's 153 that were opposed. Okay, so do you want to address anything that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I'll be brief. I appreciate, by the way, everyone here not rehashing. I think as someone who does this, as you all do on a regular basis, that's always very much appreciated. I also appreciate the decorum in the room. That's always appreciated as well. I'll go back to what I said when I started this discussion, which is this is a density question. I know you've heard people speak to density and high density. The truth is with the comp plan amendment, if you're talking about the spectrum of density as I think most people look at it, if not all, we've stepped down the density. There are going to be people who argue with that. But when we're talking about density, it's currently earmarked for high density development. And so that's what this question is about, is whether or not the density is appropriate. And I would argue that the density was already there. This actually steps it down. That's why we made the comp plan amendment. It's a step down in density from what was there. It's a buffer between high density, extremely high density in commercial on the corner to lower density, single family and golf course. That's, I think, what people consider good planning. The traffic issue is a plat issue. It's an issue that relates to whether or not we could actually get an engineering of this project approved. There's theoretically a possibility that the rezoning, there is a possibility that the rezoning could get approved and the plat, site plan and plat wouldn't, because you would at that time have traffic study information in your hand and know what the ramifications are of this proposed development. We want to provide additional access onto Aspen. This represents what we think is a workable solution. We're open to making the northerly access exit only. But I think those discussions happen at a different phase of this process, and that's why your staff report recommends approval with a traffic study and engineering review of that traffic study. And I'll take any questions you might have.
Sorry, I keep coughing. I gotta tickle on my throat.
You need some water.
Well, it's not working, but it's fine. And do you have any further questions or discussions? I don't.
Okay, if we comment now.
Mhm.
Johnny, were you going to comment? I don't want
I was just going to make a comment that I'm probably one of the few that did not go and drive the intersection there on Aspen and Omaha, because I have over the last several years driven it, and I knew better than to drive it. And I do think it is, it wasn't any sense to me slowing everybody else down. I do think it's definitely a traffic issue. I think that the density, I like this plan better than what the comp plan had called for to start with. I think this is a better plan, but I just think that it's going to be, the traffic is just too bad, and it's going to be too long. Usually we can look at this and say, well, within a year or two, we'll have that 4, 5, 6 lanes. But we get this and we look at it, and we're looking at 7, 8, 10 years down the road before that happens on this particular lane. So I like the concept. I don't like the traffic problem that's going to get worse with this. And that would go in any development, even if it was developed the way that it did in the original. It's going to be a problem. And I'll have to say, in all the years of doing this, I've not seen too many occasions that we back away from something because it's going to cause a traffic problem, because we had the means to take care of the traffic problem within a year or so. But that's not the case here. So I just see that we're making a worse problem.
Yeah, I've always been of the opinion that we don't make our development plans based on the infrastructure. Generally speaking, we've never really determined development based on whether infrastructure is there because we develop it as we have to. And you can't make every development contingent upon whether or not the road will accommodate it at that time. It's just not a practical way to approach this. And historically, this council hasn't. There's a couple of things that I heard that I want to go on record explaining my position. As the mayor said, we have a 96% occupancy rate on apartments. So clearly there's a demand for apartments. So to say we don't want any more apartments, I think would be short-sighted. Like Councilor Park said, this plan is not a terrible plan. In a vacuum, it's not a terrible plan. And there is a demand for apartments. And the only way you build more commercial is having more residential, because you have more people to feed the commercial businesses with the residential. And at 96% occupancy, that means that there's high demand for apartments. Likewise, you have a lovely idea. In fact, we're doing something like that on the south end of town with the Innovation District. That's exactly what we're doing. I mean, it's not exact, but it's that kind of concept, mixed use and all that. And where we do that throughout the city, there's areas where that's happening. And so it's a delightful plan, and we'd like to see more of that. The thing is, the city owns the Innovation District. We don't own the land you're wanting to express your opinion. The developer does, and the developer within the confines of the law and zoning gets to decide what happens. You get to decide what happens at your house, within how it's zoned in the law. As long as it's zoned for that, you get to decide that. I can't tell you what to do with your house because I may have different I may have different ideas than what the developer would have for it, but I don't own it, so I don't get to decide what they do. Having said all that, I go back to how we're here. And the developer bought this knowing what the comprehensive plan was when they bought it. And many people expressed when they bought this property knew what the comprehensive plan said. Now, I've gone on record saying that I think this plan is better than what the comprehensive plan held. And if you stop and think through it, this is a lot nicer than maybe having a storage building or a storage center next to you, perhaps. You may disagree, and that's fine. But when you bought it, that's what it was, the comprehensive plan said. And I voted to amend comprehensive plans before, and I voted because it made sense and because there was no opposition, or the opposition was not a rational opposition. In this instance, I've not heard anyone that came and spoke in support of amending the comprehensive plan. In fact, I had people say, we would rather have storage buildings or heavy commercial than apartments. I disagree with them. I think in the end, they'd probably change their minds because I've lived by both, but that's what they bought. So I struggle with voting for something that I didn't support the comprehensive plan change and then saying, oh, well, okay, I'm going to support this. To be consistent, which is what I try to do, I couldn't support this for that reason. And this developer, they've developed many things in our community. They do quality work. I'm glad that they invest in Broken Arrow, and I always appreciate their representative who always treats this council respectfully and presents issues appropriately and well thought out, which is why I'm taking so much time to explain my position this evening, because I owe that to them because they've invested in our community to a great deal. But I can't support this. Setting aside the infrastructure issues in a vacuum, this is probably a great plan, but because of infrastructure issues, and because there was opposition to the amendment of the comprehensive plan that was well stated and well reasoned, I can't support this, and that's the reason.
I appreciate that, and I know you're in discussion, but I would without approval at all, the commercial development pieces cannot happen. And so if the sentiment is an issue with the apartment piece and traffic, and there's a condition that would be appropriate, then that may be an avenue. But without the approval of the commercial doesn't even happen.
we could make a motion to approve PUD without, how do you even word that? Without the apartment?
Subject to the, at a time,
Or
or
should you just come back and?
A discussion was had earlier about conditioning it upon the widening of the street.
But that would be.
What are options here? I mean, you're in the council and the developer just mentioned something. Can you speak to what you're hearing about, because I'm not sure, I'm not sure I understand.
what I heard was that if we could approve the commercial aspect of it, and that the multifamily would be subject to widening of the streets. So that would be at some point. But if we don't approve anything, the commercial aspect isn't happening. Is that what, did I understand that correctly?
I think I heard that the commercial isn't going to happen if the apartments don't happen.
Oh, I didn't
No,
hear
that's
that.
not, the
Okay.
approval makes way for the additional commercial. It's part of this plan.
Yeah.
The apartments are the driver, but if the sentiment is that, which is what I've heard, is that traffic, because if infrastructure doesn't support it, then it sounded to me like the proposal that was made by Mr. Spurgeon was that you might condition it upon the widening of the road. That apartment development, in other words, an approval of the plan with the apartment development conditioned upon the road being widened before construction can begin.
So what would be our options?
That just seems so weird that, I mean, so you're saying your company, or I don't, who you represent would, I mean, we're talking 7-8 years out. So they'd want to like say we won't do anything for 7 or 8 years and just to get this part approved.
Well, I'm making decisions on the fly with the playing field that I have to play with.
Yeah.
And
that's-
based on the comments that I'm hearing. I've been in contact with my client. I told them about that. They don't love it. But it is what it is. An approval of the commercial alone is not going to result in any development. And if this body's would like to, if it's trending towards denial of the whole thing, then I think we would probably withdraw our application at this point.
Larry, did you have options?
I was
to
just going to
consider?
tag on to what city manager said in regards to approval of the PUD condition on the street being widened. If council does choose to go that direction, if they could clearly state what that is,
Yeah.
what defines that. So in this instance, perhaps you're saying the widening of the road, you're saying the widening of Omaha of the road from Aspen to Elm, which is the next major.
And widening doesn't equal adding a right-hand turn lane. I mean, I think we need to
It's
say
just-
exactly what widening means.
Yes, that way that
Because-
staff is not having to interpret what council is stating. And that's the only reason why we just asked for clarification, if that is your decision.
I think you're making quite a few what is to be several years down the road.
Yeah.
Being difficult to interpret, you know what I mean, there at that time. I even question if we even deny it, what happens to it? It doesn't revert back to what it was to start with. Only the developer can ask that. You know, it was in a situation of where part of it was industrial zoning before we started this process.
Well, the comp
So
plan
he
won't
might not
change.
want it. He might not want that. He might want to change that comp plan back to the industrial part. And he has the right to do that. Is that correct?
That is correct. The comprehensive plan amendment that was approved by council was subject to a PUD similar to this, or similar to what was an example PUD that was submitted at the time, and having that PUD approved by council. And so until that is done, the original comprehensive plan is still in place.
Okay, that's my question.
Correct.
I'm so confused. It's very complicated.
If, and this is for the benefit of the applicant too, although being an attorney, he knows this as well as I do. If the application is withdrawn and no action is taken, then it can be reconsidered and resubmitted at any time. If it's rejected, then there's a time period before it can be resubmitted. Is that
Because
correct?
the underlining zoning request is the time factor. PUDs do not have a time factor on them, but the zoning does. So that
Okay.
means if the zoning was denied, it would be a year before they could reapply.
But if it's withdrawn, they can submit it at any time.
Correct.
I don't think I feel comfortable voting on like just the commercial, and then we have to like come up with something right now out of the air of like what defines widening the road. Because we don't know what that means because we haven't made up a bond. I mean, we don't have that language.
With that being said, and I might be the most popular person in the room at this point, I'm going to withdraw my application. Thank you, counselors.
Thank you.
My coughing has started other coughing, sorry. Okay, item 9B, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of SP 284A. Larry Curtis.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, SP 284A is a request to amend the existing specific use permit on the property, also known as SP 284, to allow short-term rental units, AV hookups, to be used for short-term rental space and place of assembly. In their meeting on July 28, 2022, Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 3-0 of SP 28A per staff recommendation. Staff recommended SP 228A, the request for short-term rental with use for hookups for 4 bedrooms and place of assembly be approved subject to the following conditions: a site plan and other building permit applications be submitted for the building containing the proposed short-term rental and place of assembly use. Site plan must account for all code requirements and be approved by staff before a short-term rental license may be issued or a assembly use to be used at the site. That RV hookups are not going to be permitted to be utilized for short-term rental space or for commercial purposes. That the areas designated as short-term rental may be rented for up to 30 days per section 3.2C6B of the zoning ordinance. Of the short-term rental portion of the specific use permit shall expire if the current property owner sells the property. One property owner spoke in opposition to the request. One person signed up at the meeting in opposition but did not want to speak. 2 comments were submitted online stating that they were undecided on the issue. Concerns raised included hours of operation, type of events to be held, alcohol consumption on the property, traffic, and noise concerns. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I think someone asked that, like, there's not been, they haven't specifically said what they're wanting to like rent it out for.
It would be an
Specifically,
event.
just be an event space.
Yeah, during
basically.
the meeting, it was basically stated that the applicant would be utilizing it for an event space. And so I believe the applicant is in the audience and probably give more information than I can about that, more detailed information. But 7,000 square feet would be utilized for an event space with the short-term rentals associated with it used for short-term rentals.
I'd like to hear from the applicant. Yes. Come on down.
I'm David Yance. I live at Yoli Ranch, 23401 South 29th East Avenue. Thank you for seeing me tonight.
Sure.
What can I answer for you?
Just what's your vision?
Okay, so we've been approached many times about having a wedding, weddings out at the property, and we just don't really have the right process set up for it, but it's something that's interesting because we're zoned agricultural and there's not a lot of uses. There's not a lot of ways to make money there. So we have the horse business, which is good, and it seems to complement it to have a small event center. We have a secondary barn that is not being used, and it would be a perfect, and obviously there's work that needs to be done. It just has to be brought up to code and all that, because we're not spending money.
Yeah.
Exactly. But we would, obviously comply with all that.
So it's in a wide open, like barn? 7,000
Yes,
square feet?
in fact, I can show you. It's this one right here.
That one?
Oh, I didn't mean.
That's okay. Don't touch the screen. I'm just kidding. Okay. You guys have any questions?
So the RV hookups would be for what? Like people coming to the event and just,
Well, we have people that come trailer their horses across country,
okay.
and we're a spot because we're close to the highway where you can only drive so many hours with horses, and so we have a lot of transient people that come through. And right now, what they do, most of these people have a living quarters in front of their trailer, and so they end up parking and then park the trailer, and then we drive them or we call them an Uber and find them someplace to stay. It just makes sense that they're coming through. A lot of them, these are $400,000 horses that stay, and a lot of them, they don't want to leave them.
Yeah.
And so they want to be there, and they're high strung out. That are
They're not strung out. They're just.
they're very strung out. These horses are they've been
The horses.
when they sit in for 10 hours or standing in 10 hours in a horse trailer all day, and it's hot, and they get there,
So
it's
you
hard for
own-
them to leave, and then we're like, okay, well, it's late, you need to leave, and
Okay, this makes a lot more sense to me now. Because I was like, what is this? Like whenever I read it. How many acres do you have?
80.
Okay.
And that's your home at the top of where the pond
Yes,
is?
ma'am.
And what's the building below your
That's
house?
my office.
Okay.
Just a home office.
This does make more sense. I was having a hard time understanding what you were asking, but that
Totally random question. Do you know how many acres or how far it is from the home that's above the pond? Because I think that someone has asked.
Say it one more
about-
time.
Do you know how many acres it's between the
Are you
house above the
saying
pond?
between my house and the barn?
Oh, that's your house.
That's his
Yeah,
house.
this is where I live.
Oh, okay.
That-
Is there any other people on that
No.
property? Oh, that's yours. Okay.
So the whole, sorry. You own that whole area?
Yes,
That's the
ma'am.
square. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That's the 80 acres. Okay.
Okay.
uh,
All right.
I'd make a motion to approve SB 284A per planning commission staff recommendation.
Second?
I got to hit the button. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a motion and a second. Roll call. Motion passes. Yes.
I'm not a farm guy.
I'm just glad it wasn't anything we were done.
I know.
Sorry. 9C, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an authorization to purchase 2 Ford 4x4 ambulances and to cancel 2 of our previous ambulance orders. Chief Moore.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. We're here to talk about the proposed purchase of 2 Horton ambulances in lieu of 2 AEV ambulances that we purchased in January of this year. You may recall in our last meeting, we did an emergency and immediate purchase for 2 motors for some 2014 ambulances. Those motors have still not come in and are not, there's no arrival date anticipated due to the shortages still that are nationwide. We did purchase 3 ambulances last July of 2021. Those ambulances, we received 1 of those, and then we purchased 3 more in January of 22. We have not received any of those yet. So we've been working with our dealer to find options and alternatives. We've looked at loaners, we've looked at rentals, and we asked them to search any ambulance brand. What we currently buy are AEV is the brand name of our ambulances, and those are what I would consider kind of the Cadillac of ambulances. They're a very nice unit for our folks and for our citizens. But they were able to find 2 ambulances that are called Horton ambulances, and we're able to secure those for us should the council move forward with the purchase of those. I would consider them the Ferrari of ambulances. So they're a little bit more expensive, but the difference between the AEVs and the Hortons that is paramount is we could get them. We still have no guarantees on the purchases we've already made of the AEV manufacturer. And while we've worked closely with the AEV manufacturer and our dealer to get chassis to them, we've done everything we possibly can. We just cannot get chassis from Ford, Chevy, or Dodge. So Horton actually already has one available. That's what you're seeing the pictures of. It's already built, made. You can go to that last one if you'd like. It's already built and made, and this is the spec of graphics that will be put on it tomorrow, presumably, if council approves this purchase. And then one more, the second Horton actually has a chassis, and it begins construction tomorrow. And if council approves the purchase of both of those units, one we could potentially get in early September, as you see there, and one we would get towards the end of the year, which would help us kind of dig our way out of the ambulance shortage that we're not quite faced with yet, but is pending. So I would, the other thing that's important, the Hortons are also, they qualify with the bidding laws and so forth. So we're actually able to buy it off the buy board purchasing cooperative. So we can move forward with it very, very quickly. So we would recommend that you approve and authorize the purchase of 2 Horton ambulances and approve the authorization of fiscal year 2023 budget amendment number 9.
This has nothing to do, well, it does, but any particular reason why that look is not in line with the rest of our ambulances?
That's the current,
Has nothing to do with this.
that's the current
Well, actually, I have the
ambulance.
same question. Why can't we get it to look the same as what we have?
We could, but it's going to take more time and more money. And we need the truck, this would be a reserve truck.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be one of our frontline trucks. So if you see that one, that's kind of going to mean one of our front lines has had a flat tire. It's in the shop. It's having the air conditioner worked on, or maybe it's just getting preventative maintenance. But because this one is immediately available, we wanted to
So
get it to
basically, they're
town.
going to put Broken Arrow Fire Department on it.
If you go back to the first thing, this is what it looks like, right? And that's proposed what it would look like with all of the state mandated lettering and so forth. This is actually what it looks like right now. So it's
Okay.
it's their demo truck.
Yeah.
And so it has that's exactly what it's already looked like. And so it was available and ready in Columbus with 400 miles on it, and we can get it quickly.
Well, I can tell you, I like this idea a lot better than buying those engines for old ambulances.
Yeah.
So I totally support this.
This is going to be, because we're buying these Hortons, there will be an increased cost of $126,000, but we're able to take the money that we've already committed to those AEV trucks and slide it, because we're working with the same dealer. So we're able to slide the purchase for 2 of the AEV ambulances that we made in January. We're going to be able to apply those funds to this. So we'll only be out an additional $126,000 for these 2 trucks. And these trucks have a few more options. I believe they're both 4-wheel drive, which we don't buy 4-wheel drive, but it's sort of a perk that may also be beneficial. But they're 4-wheel drive, and they have lots of different bells and whistles and so forth. But they are at an increased cost of where we were.
Is it typical that we would take the newest ambulances we have and put them in reserve?
No, typically we move the newest ambulances we buy and we put them right on the front line, and then we reserve the other ones. We still have 5, or we'll still have, after this, we'll still have 3 AEVs on order.
Mhm.
And so we will begin rotating them in. The budget also includes us to do remount for 3 AEV ambulances this year. All of that is incumbent on getting a chassis. So because this is a little bit unique, this one here, we will probably just make as one of our premier reserves, which probably, I hate to give a statistic, but there's almost a reserve in service somewhere every day. So it'll be on the front line quite a bit. But because of the paint scheme and all that, I can't remember exactly, but tens of thousands of dollars to repaint this and make it match ours. We could do some wrapping of it, but it was more important to get it here in town and get it in service at this time.
I agree with the analysis. I was just trying to figure out why you couldn't, but you've answered that question.
You're purchasing 2 and they're starting the build on the second one. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What's the time frame on it?
We should have it by the end of the year. Usually it's about 6 months, but should council approve this, it's already coming down. They've already got the chassis on site, and they said it begins August 17th. We just happen to get in line and kind of speak for it tentatively and say, Okay, if approved by council, we want it and it will come in with our paint scheme and our colors, and they're not going to be the exact, they'll look the same outside, honestly, but inside the compartments might be a little bit different location because this is a little bit different brand. And we didn't customize it from the onset. We're kind of grabbing some models that were available to make sure we're able to serve our citizens with functioning ambulances.
I'd make a motion, the council approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. And real quick, Chief, just for audience that may not know, we're having a very hard time getting equipment. Ordering
That's
and-
correct.
Okay.
It's really the parts are very difficult to keep the nationwide shortage of parts to keep the fleet functioning, whether it's the fire trucks, ambulance, trash trucks, or anything. We're having a very difficult time keeping those ambulances going. And the plan was to have 6 new ambulances here, which would have pushed out those older units that are requiring a lot of maintenance, the 2014s, the 2009s, the 2006s.
Yeah.
But because of the delay in getting those here, that's kind of pushed the situation.
Thank you.
It's not just ambulances. We're having difficulty in some cases getting parts for lawnmowers.
Right.
And doors for senior center.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's,
It's well said. It is a real challenge, and I applaud the directors of trying to keep things cut and addressed, especially for parks and
That's what I was gonna say. I appreciate Chief Moore for thinking outside of the box
Yeah.
and keep at it. So I just was not loving buying motors for old ambulances, so,
That's still being done.
okay.
I don't want to mislead.
Oh, okay, so we are
We
still buying,
We have not canceled
Yeah.
the orders on those 2.
because
yet,
we may need
because
them.
we're really at 10 ambulances right now. If everything's functioning right now, we're at 10 ambulances. We really would prefer to be at 14 to 16 because we're running 7 a day, sometimes 8 a day, and it's almost a 1-for-1. That's how frequently our reserves are in the front lines.
so this will put us at 11 pretty quickly.
Yes, the one you saw in the picture puts us at 11. December, we'll be back at 12. If we get the 2 motors in and we put those in the 14s, which is still moving forward, we'll be back at 14. And
I'm still not loving it, but we'll be
I
at
agree.
14.
I'm still not loving it either, but assuming that we get those chassis in, that puts us really at, if we get those 3 chassis in, then that would put us, at 17? And then we could sunset those 2 with
Yeah.
brand new motors. It's not a great situation, but we're wanting to make sure we're doing what's right, having more or less a backup plan.
Absolutely.
They wanted to see.
No, thanks for clearing that up.
All right. So we actually voted and that passed. So,
Congratulations.
and then we discussed more. So we are now on to item 9D. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an authorization to execute Resolution 1483, a resolution submitting to the voters of the city of Broken Arrow at a special election to be held November 8th pursuant to ordinance number 3745. Trevor Dennis.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. At last council meeting, as you may recall, the city manager directed staff to prepare an item for your consideration about possibly sending this question back to the voters at the next general election, which would be November 8th. We had to move quickly on this. You have to provide at least 75 days notice to the Tulsa County Election Board. And so that's why it's moved as quickly as it has. As you can see through the resolution, we've outlined the history of it. Basically, Broken Arrow has had fireworks since December 20th, 2004. Subsequently had presented to the vote of the people pursuant to ordinance number 2822 on August 21st, 2006, question of whether or not we should have fireworks or not. November 7th, 2006, that vote was taken. It passed by a measure of 14,795 in favor and 8,985 against. So that's what this item is. It has proposition language that would be submitted to the Tulsa County Election Board. If this body so desires, there's an ordinance that would also have to be considered and passed with an emergency clause if it's this body's desire to do so. I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this item.
All right. Discussion.
Well, I thank you for blaming the city manager for this, but I'll take full credit for it.
I was like, would you like to start?
Yeah, well, we've, over the last several months, we've had a number of people come to council, and then several others reached out, and I know Councilor Ford shared some additional emails about this with great consternation about this ordinance. Most of it, I think, dealt with how the permitting was done and how there was charges, and then the rest of it dealt with limiting people's ability to do something that I think people feel is just a naturally given right to do. Based on that, I thought it would be wise to take the public's temperature again, because this is a 16-year-old ordinance. It was passed by the council and then ratified by the citizens of Broken Arrow. And because the citizens of Broken Arrow had their say at that time, I felt it would be at least appear, if not actually be, we can debate, heavy-handed for the council to, on its own, take action to change or adjust the ordinance. And so I asked if there was interest and suggested that this matter be submitted to the people to tell us if this is still their will or if they have changed their minds based on the feedback we're getting that was in opposition to the ordinance. And that was the purpose behind it. I don't have necessarily great angst in either direction, but I just don't feel like I can vote to modify what's currently in place, since it was something the people voted to do. And before I would be willing to modify the current ordinance, me personally, I would want to know if the will of the people is reflected in the same. So that was the purpose of this. I think that the November election is a better time than waiting till April, because A, I don't want that to be the issue for city council. I want it to be the city council's actions rather than this issue and then, oh, by the way, we have council elections. Secondly, I think we get a lot more turnout in November than we would in April, so we may get a true flavor for what the citizens want based on the turnout before the November, which is why I thought it would be a good idea to place it on the November. I mean, that made more sense to me, but anyway.
So my question is, can we have a permit and just not charge a fee?
Yes, you have the right to do that.
Okay, because the citizens vote, and really they voted for fireworks with a permit because that was their choice. I mean, it was either fireworks with a permit or no fireworks. So they voted for fireworks with a permit. And so we could go with it with no fee, and could we make it to where you buy a permit one time? Because it says permit, it doesn't say permit every year. It just says you get a permit. So they get, because I feel like a permit is still valuable because you could give the rules. These are the rules. This is the ordinance. These are the safety tips. Go do your thing. And, follow the rules. So we could do a one-time permit, and that would still follow along with the nature of what they voted for.
So to answer your first question first on the fee, currently the system is we have a manual fees. It's voted on by this body every year.
Mhm.
You currently could set that fee at zero.
Mhm.
You have the power to do that. If you want to ask the public what the fee is, you certainly can ask them to do that as well. The second question, I'm not aware of us doing multi-year permits, but I'm not aware of any legal prohibition from doing that.
Okay.
If you wanted to write the ordinance currently, just by the vote of council, you have the power to do that. If you wanted to send a question to the public, you could do that. I will say you don't have time to change this language to meet the November 8th deadline for the general election. We certainly can make that change, vote on it. It would go on a different election or a special election.
How much is it going to cost to put it on the ballot?
So we won't know that until we actually get the bill from the Tulsa County Election Board. My understanding, at least preliminarily, if it is on the general election on November 8th, it'd be in the range of $10,000. Can't give you the exact that amount because they would invoice us for it. There's a process there. I don't know what the amount would be if it wasn't on the general election. I believe it would be somewhat more, but again, I can't venture to say what that would be.
Okay. I think y'all know where I'm going with this. There's no interest at all that I have of putting this back on the ballot. Our our city voted on it. Are we going to revote it like every 15 years?
I
And
don't.
We have the same
like I
number
said,
of permits, it seems, across the board as we have the entire time. So permit numbers,
Like I said,
Doesn't fluctuate
I'm
that
just, I'm getting people telling me they don't like this ordinance. And I'm
well,
thinking,
but people say they don't like a lot of things. I mean, I get emails. I mean, I'm sure we all do, like constantly.
I had people on this council saying they didn't
Yeah.
like this ordinance.
Yeah.
So I was trying to say, but I feel, and this council may feel, the rest of the council may feel differently. I just can't vote to amend this ordinance when this is what the people voted for.
oh, absolutely not.
And
No.
so and that would include the permit, because if you look at what was, one of our attentive citizens who pays attention to these things provided materials. And in the newspaper article that was written about this, it talked about there would be a $20 permit, that the permit would go to pay for execution of the permit and to pay for overtime for administration of this. So,
Well, that was in the newspaper article. That wasn't what they voted on.
but that's what was sold. I think Councilor Ford would agree with me. That was the point that was sold. So, I mean, if you are comfortable with that, that's certainly your
Well, I was
prerogative. I'm
sold
just
that
not.
I was sold on a lot of things from a lot of elections that isn't actually what was on the ballot. You vote for what's on the ballot. So,
That's one, I mean, that's one way to look. I'm just know that it was sold to the citizens with the permit fee.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm
hear what you're
uncomfortable.
saying.
I'm uncomfortable going back and saying, I didn't mean it.
But I feel like too, they feel like that permit fee was going to pay for more officers to work overtime
Yes.
and even firefighters, the marshals or whatever. And I think that's the piece of it. What I'm hearing is they don't feel like that's happening.
And it wasn't. I agree.
Yes.
It wasn't
but we
until this
haven't
past
needed
year.
it. I mean, if you only have like how many tickets, it's.
But I think people quit calling because they didn't feel like anyone was going out to do anything about it. Because if you look at it, and if you look in 2005, there was 64 citations written. So I mean, clearly it can be enforced. But then from, and I don't know why we don't have statistics from 2008 and 2007 to 2008 to 2017. There's like nothing to go back to look at. Like I don't have them unless you all have them somehow. But then like in 2017 through 22, there were 3 citations over those 6 years, where in 1 year, 2005, they wrote 64 citations. That's what I'm hearing from the constituents is, and I don't care either way about the fee either. I just
I'm
want
hearing the
there,
same thing.
I just want to be some rule, because I don't want I love the 4th of July. It's my favorite holiday. I love the red, white, and blue, but I don't want to hear fireworks for 3 weeks straight. And I feel like if we don't have a permit or rules, we're going to have it a week before 4th of July, the week of the 4th of July, the week after the 4th of July. So that's,
We can still have a permit. But okay, here's the thing. The people, okay, so when we show up, when somebody calls the police on someone that's doing fireworks and the police come and give a ticket, they did something wrong. They maybe don't have a permit or they did something wrong. So those are the people that aren't following the rules anyway. So, which goes, so we're punishing, I mean, this is my thinking is, I mean, doing more and more and more, we're punishing the people that are like following the rules. We're going and we're getting our little permit. We're going online and we're doing our thing and we're jumping through the government hoops. But then the people over here that aren't doing the right thing are like raining on my parade because they're the ones that are making it to now where we have to go back to a vote and spend $10,000. I just feel like the people that are doing the right thing are paying for the people that are doing the wrong thing. But I mean, that's the case in a lot of things.
I was going to say that seems to be the American
Yes.
system these days.
But it's not right. It's
I
not
agree.
right
I
to
agree.
do things. So,
Well, I don't need to be in this discussion. I think, because I really don't care. I voted opposed to it to start with.
us
And
how
as
you
you
feel,
know,
Johnny.
we go to Yorktown, where actually the battle was won, and watch the fireworks there every year. And I can do that cheaper than I can buy that many fireworks and
I know.
put it down in my street.
Arguing
Right.
over $20 permit when
Now,
people spend thousands of dollars on this
My
stuff.
problem is this though, and I can take or leave it. I just say if we do anything, it has to be a revote of the people. I'm not saying it has to be that, but I'm gonna have to get somebody at my house for those 2 or 3 days because there was fireworks all over my roof, all over my yard. I mean, huge bottle rockets. They were 2 foot long. Bottle rockets laying in my yard.
Did you call the
So,
police?
I was
Wasn't
in
there.
Virginia.
Yeah.
I said I'll have to get somebody at my house
He's gonna-
to watch it, and I'm going to do that. So, irregardless, I mean, if we change anything, it has to go to the vote. But if we don't change anything, I'm going to get somebody to.
And we don't have to change anything. I just, in my mind's eye, so that this council would know what to do based on the will of the people, would get the will of the people. I mean, I'm okay either way. I'm
I
not
would just
gonna
like to
vote
have
to
a
change anything.
conclusion tonight.
Yeah.
I think you
No,
need
I
a
Because we've been
agree.
talking
I
about
think
it
you
a
need a
really
permit,
long
though.
time.
If you don't have a permit,
I
everybody.
never said no permit.
I wasn't
Oh,
looking
yeah,
at you.
yeah.
I was just talking in general. I really think that whether it costs something or not, you need to at least let the city know that you're firing it off that night.
Go ahead.
The thing is, you can't mandate your neighbors to be good neighbors. And so your neighbors are jerks if they're leaving stuff on your roof and they're doing stuff out
Neighbors
there
are jerks.
that, well, I mean, they are.
Can I pass that
So-
on?
Yes, you can.
And if they burn
And,
your house, you have an
so-
interesting claim against them.
but I mean, some of your neighbors that are doing that, like if I had a neighbor that had PTSD and had dealt with something in war or whatever, you know what? I wouldn't shoot my fireworks because I'm a good neighbor.
Because you've
But I
built a
can't-
relationship and had
Yes,
conversations.
But
with
I
them.
can't mandate someone not to be a jerk, unfortunately.
Right.
And so, and I mean, and that's what I feel like we're trying to do. So I would love to, but I don't believe in mandates.
So just let me know what you decide.
So then what?
Well, let me just share this with you is that I've spoken to Norm and to Chief Berryhill about my belief about how important it is that we enforce the ordinance for the very reasons you brought up tonight. And we had a good plan this year. And I've instructed Norm to work with the chief to make sure every year that we enforce whatever it is that the council has an ordinance with regard to this. So I just want council to know and the public to know is that whether there's a permit with a fee or without a fee, the time frame that you're allowed to shoot that, if you're outside of that, or if you don't have a permit, and we get called, then we will have someone that's going to come out. Our goal is not to issue citations, but certainly those people that don't want to comply, there has to be ramifications.
Well, and so if the discussion is the permit fee, which is fine. Again, I'm just trying to respond to what I'm being told people want. If the permit fee is the debatable question, I think we need, before we can vote on that and address a permit fee, we need to understand what the cost of issuing the permits is, because every permit the city has a fee, nominal at least, to compensate for the cost of processing and issuing the permit.
But they do it themselves for this.
So in terms of time, I don't believe that the actual fee has changed. I mean, you'd have to get what the processing time is for staff. That's the difference between a fee versus a tax. This certainly is not a tax. I don't have that data in front of me, but
I would want to know that
Yeah.
because, and I would also want to know how much we're paying if we're going to enforce it, which I agree, that's been the biggest complaint is, well, why aren't you enforcing it? If we're going to enforce it, I want to know what it cost us. So if we're doing away with the fee, we know what we're going to be paying extra for.
Well,
I
and
mean,
even
we just need to know that so we can make the proper.
And even being transparent with our citizens on this is how much money
Right.
we brought in from these permits. This is how much money we paid out in police and fire or cleanup or whatever we're having to do. Just be transparent. I mean, because what I'm hearing too is you've made all this money, but
Yeah, but where is it?
what's
Well,
happening?
and I would assume those permit fees are already in the budget for next year, the approximate.
What we do is the finance director, she estimates based on prior years permits, issuance of permits. It's an anticipated revenue. So
then
the
we
money
would have to reduce
goes
that.
into the budget, goes in the police fund,
Mhm.
is my understanding. And so it's going to help fund the police department. So,
Can we clarify that though with Chief Berryhill? Because I thought it went into the general fund. I think originally it did go to the police when it first started. Is that, or who do I ask?
I thought it went to
Norm?
general, but it was allocated for the police.
It goes to,
Okay.
it goes to the general fund
But allocated for police budget.
through the budgeting process.
Okay.
Not like a specific line item that says
Correct.
firework enforcement.
Do we
Well, I
wanna
mean,
speak
to me, that's a accounting thing.
Yes.
We could say the fees for this permit go, general fund, but they go to that's an accounting number. If this,
A line item.
yeah, line item, if this fee was paid for this permit, that went to the police, because I like to know, are we even making a drop in the bucket for enforcement? Because if this $20 fee isn't really scratching the surface, what is the point of it?
It's about $55,000.
But I'm just saying,
Approximately.
yeah.
Well, that says 33 this year.
If it was, oh, okay. Well, if there was.
I don't do math. That's
I believe it's
what I'm
approximately
I just did
33.
2,200 people
Uh,
times $25.
saying. Or is it 20?
22. Is the new one 25?
I don't know.
I thought it was 25. We don't even know how much the fee is
I don't
apparently.
know.
Matt knows.
I have the manual fees with me,
Matt
but
knows because
yeah,
he
it's
put it in.
approximately
the
Yeah,
notes.
we
Larry,
we
how
have
much are the
Matt
fees?
talking,
Yeah,
so
it's currently $23.
$23.
For the
So
last,
23.
it's proposed as the October one to go to 25.
Yeah, definitely don't want to do that. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
So our options are,
Well, do we have?
Well, we have
someone-
speakers.
oh, yes,
have
we
a
do have
speaker.
one. Sorry, Trevor.
No.
We do have one
Thanks,
person
Trevor.
signed up. Sorry,
Thanks,
Matt.
Norm. I just want to share that.
Matt Griffith is eagerly waiting to speak.
He'll be ready.
He is ready.
He
It's
is.
been
I like
ready.
his packet.
No, I appreciate this. It's
I
always-
know, he did
We
his
talked
research.
about this. I said, give me stuff to look at.
Yes.
There's nothing else that keeps me engaged.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. I just want to let you know that I am against this going back to the people. I want to tell you why. It's because there's a fee attached to it. I understand the arguments about how a fee is needed to satisfy the work that goes with issuing a permit and this and that. And I know there are several opinions that go along with that. I know there are many who are against a permit altogether. I agree with them. But after the discussions I've had, and I believe this is the best option, is just to eliminate the fee because it's a middle ground option. And I want to start with the facts. The fact is, on July 19th, I submitted an open records request. You can see it up there. Request asking how many fireworks permits were issued last year, how many were issued this year, and how much revenue the city made this year. They responded. They said in 2021, they sold 2,209 permits, bringing in $48,098. In 2022, the city issued 1,526 permits, bringing in $33,572, with roughly 40,000 households in our city. That's a fair judgment, I would say. That shows that not even 5% of Broken Arrow households in our city bought a permit this year. I can tell you more than that amount of people shot off fireworks. It's just not fair. Some argue that the lack of enforcement is due to the personal choices of our great and brave police officers that protect our city every single day. As you can see on the next page, I was sent a list of calls from July 2nd through July 5th of this year. The total number of fireworks-related calls this year between those two dates ended up being 107, with one citation issued. I did black. So let's rewind a little bit and talk about how I believe we got here. In December of 2004, the Tulsa World released an article about this ordinance, and I will share some of the highlights. It says the new ordinance adopted by a 5-0 vote will allow Broken Arrow households to put on their own private displays next Independence Day, as long as they pay for a $20 city permit. This right here shows that the fee was established not by the people, but by the council. Later on in the article, the police chief at the time, Todd Westwald, said if 1,000 people get a permit, that's 25,000, which will fund a lot of overtime. Respectfully, that's not overtime, that's overkill. He went on to say that prior to this ordinance, the enforcement was haphazard and did little to stop lawbreakers. You can go back and look at my open records request and you will see not much has changed there. Then he went on to say that I anticipate that compliance will build every year as every year we cite more and more people. He could not have been more wrong. 2005 was the only year the city has issued over 50 citations, and the city hasn't issued more than 10 citations in over a decade. This brings us to the 2006 vote. According to another Tulsa World article, the police chief said this proposed vote would settle it once and for all. Well, so he thought. It says city officials said the approach hit its intended targets, both financially and popularity-wise. In 2005, only 1,520 people bought a permit. That doesn't sound very popular. And 64 citations were issued. Again, the city advertised a fee, and they increased the fine to $225. The Tulsa World also stated that the funding sources generated $44,000, several times more than enough to pay for overtime patrol costs and perhaps even to help fund the election. Their words. And lo and behold, the police chief came back and said the old system of outlawing fireworks within the city limits altogether did not work. So they took it to a vote, and voters approved the permit, but they did not vote for a fee. And with the facts that I've presented tonight, I cannot support a fee for a required permit that less than 5% of Broken Arrow households actually get. It's time for the council to settle this once and for all and do the right thing. Either cancel the fee, cancel the permit, but outlawing fireworks altogether, back to the beginning, and we'll be here again I'll be here again next year. You can count that.
Thank you. I will say that the reduction in the permits this year were probably because our ordinance states that you can't get a permit after 5 p.m. on the last business day before the 4th of July. So no one was able to purchase permits after 5 p.m. on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. So
Yeah.
those are 4 days basically
No,
that
that's
they
a
would
good
have bought
Yeah.
It's a
permits.
setup, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Wait a
intentional, I'm
minute.
sure.
So Matt, you did something on social media. I can't.
Yeah, I did. I did a Facebook poll on social media last week, and it's still up till today. It was on Facebook, and as of 4:45 today, it reached about 2,000 people. It was on the South Alert Neighbors page, if you're on there. I don't know if you are. And I asked a simple question. I asked, should a permit be required to shoot off fireworks in the city of Broken Arrow? 200 people responded. 25% said yes, 55% said no, and 16% said fireworks should not be allowed in the city limits. The other 4% created options that you could go and see for yourself.
Matt, can I specifically, what is it that you would like the council to do?
I would like the the permit is fine, but there should be no fee. The people never voted for a fee. So to say it was on the people to decide the fee, I personally don't feel it was advertised. If it was advertised, I don't see it that way, and it wasn't on the ballot. So I don't think it's fair to say that the people voted for a fee if there was no fee on the actual ballot. But
I would just assume, just me, because I've not ever had a permit that didn't have a fee.
Right.
So I just automatically assume there's always going to be a fee associated with it.
And since
That's just my opinion.
and since I remember this explicitly, I didn't like the ordinance for a number of reasons, many of which are actually I remember that they were pushing that fee issue, the permit fee issue big time because it was to ostensibly pay for the cost of enforcing the ordinance. So I'm not arguing with you. But I just know that having been there at that time and participated in campaigning against it, that was part of the allure to do it, was the fact that there would be a fee to offset these costs. Whether it's a good idea or not is another issue. I'm just saying that was part of the driving behind it.
Okay.
On the calls, like the 107 calls, would that be, we didn't have officers that probably went to every one of these calls because they could have called in and said, my neighbor at this address, and the dispatcher looked it up and, oh, they have a permit, so they don't have to, they have a permit. So some of those could be the reason why they didn't go. But if they're, but it clearly says, like when they did go to the house, but no one would be there. So your neighbor could call you, the police go out there, they're done shooting the fireworks off, and there's no evidence that you can't. I think that's the issue. We want the officers to go to all the calls that are being called on.
Yeah.
But how do you cite someone if they're not standing outside anymore? And
You require
can't
the
see
neighbors
that.
have, as the police chief said last time, the neighbors have to swear out their own, and
And
most
who's gonna
neighbors are
do
going to
that?
be disinclined.
So
The police could still do the ticket if they see it happen.
Right, but if
But-
they don't, they
But if
More
they
than
don't,
likely they
then
don't
the
see it.
citizen has
Exactly.
to sign it.
Do the dispatchers have a list of all the permits?
Yes,
I think they did this year. I think they
Okay.
changed it this year to
Yeah.
where they did. They
Which
didn't
is why when
before
they
this
cut it off
year.
at 5 p.m., they printed off what was,
Mhm.
what had been in and gave it to
Yeah,
the
that
dispatchers.
was.
Yeah, that one,
That was a bummer. 'cause
yeah, that was a
I had a
bummer.
lot of.
It's-
there was a lot of
seems
people that
good
called me
and-
too that wanted to be,
It was
they wanted to follow the rules, but
Well, and it
they
was,
procrastinated.
it's all online. So, and they do their, I mean, you can do a screenshot of your permit and so you don't even have to print it out. Like if you do it on your phone. So, yeah. Matt, did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to ask one more question. I would like to know where the data is from the city from the years 2008 to 2017, because there was nothing available from there. So I found that really interesting. That's all I have.
Where did this
Thank
original data come from? The police department or our, I don't know where even the original data, that what we have from 2017 to 22 or 2004 to 2008. I imagine wherever we got that.
I think it was, came through the police department, if memory serves me right. Forgive me. It was the years requested. I don't believe the other years were requested.
Random.
That was per the open records request of those years.
So do we have that data available?
Off the top of my head, I do not know that. I can certainly find out.
I think it raises an interesting point. If it's not available, I'd be curious to know why. If it is, we might as well know that.
And we want to know which years.
From 2008 to 2000, or 2008, so 2009 to 2016
I'll make it
is
simple.
missing.
I'd like to see the data from the time this was initiated till last year. Just all encompassing, and then we'll go from there. And if it's
Or this
missing,
current
we
year,
need to know why.
2022,
Mhm.
this current year.
And what is that gonna, I mean, that'll be good data, but
What's that going to help us with
yeah, so
tonight?
look, can we make a decision on not going to a vote or not going to a vote of the people? I
I'm
am
personally not
against that.
thrilled with taking this to a vote. I'm okay with,
I think the people already voted, so.
yeah, they've already voted. I think maybe, and we can the council can do away with a fee of the permit, but I don't want to do away with the permit because I feel like there's still
Exactly.
accountability there.
And
either.
I just say, I'm uncomfortable making any changes without, since the people, and I just have to respectfully disagree. That was part of, that may not have been on the ballot, but that was part of the campaign. That was very, very integral part of it, because a lot of people were saying, well, why are we voting for a permit that's not gonna, will it be enforced? And then
You
they
know-
said, yes, we will enforce it because of this fee.
But we didn't have, I mean, when was this vote?
2006.
Okay. So we didn't have Facebook. We didn't have, I mean, we didn't have social media the way we do now. So we had newspaper
And
and,
television articles and
So,
the
but-
committee campaign.
but what I'm saying, it's not the same. I mean, the word isn't out there like it is now. I mean, yeah, I read the broken, what was it, the Scout?
Ledger.
Ledger.
What was the Scout?
It was
another
another
one.
one.
That was another
broken
one,
paper.
yeah.
It's a broken
So I was
Scout.
like, I know that was something.
Oh, I
So
already,
the-
I didn't know the Scout.
The
but-
ledger was the one that was in. place.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I can remember reading that like a long time ago, but I don't think it's safe to assume that people knew that. I mean, if it's not on the ballot, I don't think
It's
it's
not
safe.
safe to assume they didn't.
Yeah.
So, well, you assume they didn't because it's not on the ballot.
No, I don't assume that. You can't assume anything.
If it's not on the ballot, they didn't vote. I mean, so,
I feel that way.
I mean, I don't know what
We voted on what was on the ballot.
as directed by council. I don't know. We don't have to do anything. We don't.
You're not required to take action if the body so is not inclined to do so.
We were needing to have this discussion that because of the timeline, if we were going to be on the
Make a
November
motion to
ballot.
never talk about this again.
Ever. That's an option, but probably not
Yeah.
So we can
Let's move on.
request the data, the overall data. And can that just be sent to us or do we need to have a discussion again?
No, that
on an agenda?
that can just be sent to us.
And
The
we
only
just-
reason I wanted to request it is because apparently there's an allegation that's missing. And so if it is, I want to know why. And if it isn't, then
Absolutely.
I'd like to have it.
The data, to my recollection, the data that was provided was the data that was requested.
And then as far as the fee goes, I definitely don't see us wanting to raise the fee going forward. So if
that would-
anything, we may,
That
But
would have to-
I do want to discuss that at another time.
yeah, well, when we
The
go over manual fees, we can discuss whether we want to reduce it dramatically or what have you. We can do that during manual
Our next
fees.
budget
Because
year.
that'll be before the permits or.
Because we adopt that in June, don't we?
June.
Budgeting process.
Before,
Yeah.
because the fiscal year budget's already complete.
Okay, so that'll be before that, so.
So then there's no
Go ahead,
action to
Nick.
be taken.
Yeah, I will just add, Mayor, if I may. So if you want to amend that fee, that will need to come back before you because you guys voted on it in June to go into effect in October. And so therefore, if you want to amend that, you'll need to have
We'll
it
bring
brought
that
back before
forward
you.
next meeting.
Great,
Or
we'll
certain
talk about
meeting.
it again next meeting.
I just thought we were just gonna talk about it the next budget year.
Well, then, but it wouldn't go into effect until after the 4th of July,
Okay.
is what he was saying. I gotcha.
So it's adopted in June and is effective October. That's
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is already in motion. Correct?
It's been approved, so if council wants to, if council wants to eliminate the fee or
We'd have
reduce
to
the
replan all
fee,
these.
you would have to just put it on there and take the appropriate action as majority on what you'd like to establish it at, take it back to what it was prior to approval in the manual of fees. It's been approved, or if you wanted to reduce it or eliminate it, that's all within your ability to do that.
I would like to, so for that discussion, it would be helpful to know what budgetary impact that would have, just so we understand that. We can make a wise decision based on the budgetary impact.
So we'll get that information. We'll also give you the information that's in the manual of fees about what the current fee would be for next 4th of July for you to look at. We'll do that, have that on September 6th.
All right. So Trevor, we don't have to,
You know, procedurally, Mayor, if there's no vote on an item, it just dies for lack of a motion. And so you're able to go to the next item.
there are no preview ordinances. Item 11A, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of ordinance number 3745, an ordinance not to be codified, authorizing the calling and holding of an election of the Broken Arrow, City of Broken Arrow for the purpose of submitting registered qualified electors of said city in the question of whether the City of Broken Arrow can continue to allow fireworks.
I think it's a moot point.
It's a mute point.
It is a moot point. Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
so no action to be taken on item 10A, 11A,
Or
sorry.
B.
Or B.
No, for the record, no action to be taken for 11B as well. All right. Item 12, remarks and inquiries by governing body members.
Well, I want to congratulate Mission 22 because we're getting an award
No,
through.
we were nominated.
We're nominated.
Oh, I was already, we won.
Well,
Well, being nominated, we're gonna win.
We should. We should.
But it's a cool thing to be
Yes.
nominated for the Oklahoma Municipal League for that initiative that the city took on. And
Absolutely.
definitely the mayor had a huge part in that. So congratulations
Yay.
to our soon-to-be winner
Are we all going to be there at the banquet?
Yes.
Yeah.
At
at the
Omaha?
banquet.
The
At the
Omaha
Omaha
banquet.
banquet.
Yeah, and they held their first powwow this weekend, which was real great. So that was awesome that they were able to do that. It's very hot, that's what I heard. But otherwise it went very well. So,
And you two both were at the WIMAGE, the National League of Cities WIMAGE summer conference. I did not go because
We missed
I
you.
have a new job.
yes.
It's
and
cramping
I
our
have
style.
I have to pick my stuff that I have to go to. But
So WIMAGE is the Women in Municipal Government. And it was, our meeting was held in California. We were glad to be back in Oklahoma. For sure.
Anyone else?
I-
Oh, yes.
I would just like to share the 16th Amendment. And it's so weird how God works. So the 16th Amendment is about Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. So this passed in 1909, but was not ratified by the states until 4 years later in 1913. and it is the largest source of income for the U.S. government. The IRS was formed in 1862. And I'll just read a few little things about the IRS now, because we all love talking about it this week. In 2018, the IRS workforce was reduced by 15% and the IRS Enforcement Department was reduced by 25%. So in 2019, the budget for the IRS was $11.3 billion. 2022, the IRS purchased over $700,000 in ammunition. In 2021, the IRS had 78,661 employees, and the recent bill passed by the Democrats will add 87,000 to their workforce, 165,661 IRS agents. So the recent Inflation Reduction Act expands the IRS enforcement funding by about $80 billion over 10 years. So what happened with the 16th Amendment and the power to to collect taxes has turned into a huge bureaucracy. So watch, pay attention, people, because we need to always stay informed and remember that what the intention of our 16th Amendment really was.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Any remarks, City Manager?
I do, Mayor, members of council, good evening. Thank you for allowing me to comment this evening. Just two things. First and foremost, I just want to let you know that Kenny Schwab and his team have been over to the Freshman Academy today and tomorrow trying to talk to parents regarding the New Orleans Square reconstruction, reconfiguration that's taken place, and encourage many of those parents to have their kids ride the bus if that's an opportunity for them, because of the fact that there are no left turns. And obviously the plan is there won't be any left turns probably through the first semester. So we're looking at the beginning of the year to be finished, to where the second semester we would be able to get back into the roadway, and then we would move out of the roadway into making the other improvements, which, as Kenny outlined and Travis outlined when we asked for your approval of that project. So I want to thank him and his team to try to answer those questions for our residents, because it's interesting. The ninth grade center is in one part of town, and people are actually, we all know their kids come there. So there's maybe a lot of residents that aren't familiar with exactly driving. Like, I live in South Broken Arrow, so I'm familiar with that intersection. Most of us probably drive through. There's a lot of people they may not be aware that they're going to have to make arrangements. So I want to let you know Kenny took the proactive approach to that. And the other thing, I want to thank the council for having the discussion tonight about the NSU and the university situation. Universities are not only institution of higher education, and being able to get your degree close to home, a 4-year degree, and that have experience. I mean, there's so many augmented values of being able to do that. It's also an economic development driver for your community, and there's many reasons why it would be great. And so I do want to have the council have some additional discussion, because I do think we need to engage with NSU and probably have the school district as well as the chamber EDC have a discussion. And it probably would be best if we had some discussion. I got some direction, having a subcommittee member of council to go have any conversations with NSU, and having a majority there is going to require there to be an advertising. And I think that would be appropriate at a certain point. But I think sometime this fall we should have a discussion and so I can get some direction with regard to how we should proceed. And then those folks, if that's what you choose, are designated, we could partner with our local partners to talk about a strategy, because, I like the way they boiled this down. I mean, I've heard so many different things in the years about exactly what has to happen in order to affect a change. Now, we understand the politics, internal and external, the push and pull that's going to happen on the regions. We understand that, but this is boiled down to exactly what would need to happen for that to take place. So just please give that some thought. I'm glad to visit with you, but I do think we need to continue the discussion, because it is a multi-year endeavor, and we know it doesn't get started until we say go, or you say go. So
I do have some breaking news, actually, that I'd like to share with everybody here. Our own mayor, Deborah Wimpy, has been nominated as Mayor of the Year for the nominated, I know she hasn't won yet, nominated for the Oklahoma Municipal League. So congratulations. Mayor Wimpy.
Um,
Yes.
I know with the New Orleans Square, obviously it's huge inconvenience, but there's no, I mean, like there wasn't any good time to start. And I mean, it has to get done. So I just appreciate everyone's patience and,
I did an update today, Mayor, and we're 2 months into this already.
Yeah.
And I tell you, our folks did an amazing job to try to figure this out. So
And I would tell you to be mindful that the folks in the neighborhood have been terribly inconvenienced and I mean,
Yeah.
very negatively.
Yeah.
So we need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
It's been, especially near where the road's being built. So, but I also know that the city manager and are taking steps to mitigate as much as they can the inconvenience. But it is the heavy side of every decision we make results in other people being impacted. And I know because it's the neighborhood behind my neighborhood and they seem to know I live there. So they let me know.
You must be getting all the emails because I haven't gotten any complaints, like literally in a month and a half.
It's bad.
I thought everything was just
No.
smooth going.
No, I wish it was.
Yeah, I haven't gotten any either. And Kenny, I did want to say thank you to Kenny because we went out and walked around, looked at ditches and looked at the new road, or not road, drive. Sorry,
Well,
drive.
Words
that's
matter.
The
coming
people who live
behind.
behind there are not.
Yeah.
I will tell you
So-
that right now. And it's been
So-
a challenge, but
About the drive.
Mhm.
Yeah, well, it's
temporary.
not, yeah, it's just a
not
temporary for
permanent.
school buses only.
Well, and since the vice mayor bragged on Kenny, I also want to brag on Kenny because we were also at a constituent's house today and when the heat of the day, it felt like, but I do appreciate you meeting with him and I think we're going to be able to resolve that situation and he got right on it. So I like stomping in the weeds and the mud,
Yes,
the
me
dirt.
too. Me too.
So thank you.
If anyone else would like to go ahead and brag on Kenny, I'm open for
Kenny,
it.
you're doing a great job.
You're doing a great job, Kenny.
I appreciate it. I would like to point out, with Mr. Spurgeon's permission, that right after I think it's going to be about September 2nd, which should be a Friday, we will switch the traffic at that intersection. So this is the last council meeting before that happens. So I just wanted to point that out. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the east-west traffic will move to the north side, not the south. So, thank you.
But they still can't turn left, right? Because I think they're just getting the hang of that.
No left.
No left, okay.
No left turn.
Like, don't switch to no rights.
They
Okay.
issued 47 citations the other day because of people speeding through.
There
the
are a
intersection,
lot of
making a left
signs.
turn.
Yeah, don't speed.
It's crazy.
Don't break
I've
the law.
never seen someone turn left. All the times I drive through there.
No,
Is there usually an officer in the intersection when you drive through there? That's a good deterrent.
When they try to turn left at that intersection, start honking until they stop and move forward. But I wish people would read traffic signals and signs. They tend to be instructive if you actually pay attention.
Truly. Okay. If there's no further remarks, we do have an executive session, so move to,
Make a motion to go into recess while we enter beta and demo.
Second?
we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ford,
Yes.
Udi,
Yes.
Parks,
Yes.
Gillespie,
Yes.
Wimpy.
Yes. Call the Broken Arrow Municipal Authority meeting to order. Roll call.
Ford,
Here?
Udi,
Here.
Parks,
Here.
Gillespie,
Here,
Wimpy.
Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
There we go.
Agenda passes. Item 5, public hearings, appeals, presentation, recognition, and awards. There are none. General authority business, item 6A, consideration, discussion, and possible award of the lowest responsible bid to Cherokee Pride Construction, Inc., and approve authorization, execution of a construction contract at Hakey Creek Trunk Line Rehabilitation.
Good evening,
Ethan
Authority.
Edwards.
Ethan Edwards, Director of Engineering and Construction. There'll be no left turns on this project either. So this project before you tonight is for potential award for the Hakey Creek Interceptor Phase 1 project. I believe there is an exhibit associated with this. I'm hoping that there is. Yes. Okay. So Phase 1 begins at the RMUA-owned lift station in the Hakey Creek Park, which is in between Florence and Tucson on Garnett. and extends about 4,000 feet east and north up to KJM Equestrian, if you're familiar with that, just north of Florence. It's about 4,000 feet of interceptor. This interceptor is concrete and sewer don't mix very well. So the intent here is to slip line the existing concrete line with 48 and 42 inch sewer line. And we actually bid 2 additive alternates because we originally bid this a couple of months ago. It came in over budget. The additive alternates are the northernmost sections of the line. So we do recommend award of the base, additive alternate 1 and additive alternate 2 in the amount of $4,137,805 to Cherokee Pride Construction. I'd be happy to answer any questions here.
This is our main line going into Hakey Creek.
It is the main line that goes into the lift station, yes, sir. And it actually extends all the way up to, let's see here, took some notes or somewhere. Actually extends up to Washington. So the intent would be future phases we'd rehabilitate this line up to 91st Street.
Is it eaten up all the way up that far up to Washington?
The worst corrosion is at the lift station, right, just north of the lift station, but there is some corrosion throughout that entire line.
It is probably 50 years old.
Yeah.
Be nice.
It's, yeah.
I recommend awarding the lowest bid, responsible bid to Cherokee Pride Construction and approve and authorize execution.
Second?
Would you take a video of them doing a little bit of it?
Absolutely, yes, we can.
You like
Are
that,
you
don't
putting
John?
something inside that, is that what a slip line
A
is?
slip line
Like
is, yes,
going
ma'am. So
inside?
what they do is they'll cut a section of pipe out, they'll join pipe together and actually slide it into the existing pipe.
Interesting. Yeah.
How much will they have to dig up to do that?
So they'll have to dig up around every manhole, basically. But it'll be pretty minimal for the most part.
Yeah. Be sure and videotape that.
Yes, sir.
And by the way, Kenny, after we just said nice things about you, you just said 50 was old and I just turned 50. Thank you.
You make
I take it back.
It's
Does anybody want to take them back?
For pipes, it's old.
It's old for
Yeah,
concrete
pipes.
sewer.
Okay. I like,
Good
wait,
for a sewer
for,
pipe.
for a sewer pipe, I know. Okay. Motion passes. Sorry.
Thank you.
We voted, sorry. Okay, there are no, oh, well, remarks from governing body members. City manager,
I have none, ma'am.
we have no executive session.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call. Meeting's adjourned. I call the Broken Arrow Economic Development Authority to order. Roll call.
Ford. Gillespie.
Here.
Wimpy.
Are there any items to be removed from the consent agenda?
Second.
We have a motion and second. Roll call. Consent agenda passes. We have no presentations, general authority business. Remarks from governing bodies? City manager?
I have none, ma'am. I do
Yep.
think there may be needed for a closed session next meeting on a couple of potential projects I need some guidance on. So just, if that's the case, I'll make sure I get the information out to you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry. Is that too
Yeah.
fast?
There's no executive session, so we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Roll call. We are adjourned. We have an executive session. We have to take a brief
Are we
recess.
back in general, are we back in regular council session?
Oh, we are back in general session. So we move to-
Make a motion for recess to clear the room for executive session.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Ford.
Yes.
Moody.
Yes.
Parks.
Yes.
Gillespie.
Yes.
Wimpy.
Yes.
Hey, buddy. What you think about it? We could just leave.
And that's what